Today we are looking at 10 pipe tools that lived in every professional plumber's truck and every competent homeowner's basement between 1940 and 1965. They cost almost nothing. They lasted longer than the men who bought them. And they did work that modern tools struggle to match at any price. Plumbers are finding them on eBay right now, paying good money for them and putting them back into daily use. Number 1 is the item that almost no working tradesman under 50 has ever touched with his own hands. Let us get into it. Number 10. The yarning iron and caulking iron set. 2 tools, 1 purpose. Cast iron pipe joints in that era were sealed the old way. You packed oakum fiber into the bell of the joint with the yarning iron, tamped it tight in a spiral, then poured molten lead over it, and drove the lead home with the caulking iron and a hammer. The seal that resulted was used in American cities for 60 years, without a single failure attributed to the joint itself. It failed only when the pipe cracked around it. The yarning iron had a curved working end, shaped to pack fiber into a round opening without shredding it. The caulking iron had a blunt chisel face, ground to a specific width to match standard pipe bell dimensions. You owned a set of them in 3 widths, and they handled every pipe diameter you were likely to encounter. Modern push-fit fittings seal on a rubber O-ring that degrades in 30 years. The lead and oakum joint those irons produced is still holding in buildings that went up during the Truman administration. The irons are unchanged because they never needed changing. Number 9. The chain pipe vise. A heavy cast iron jaw fixed to a base plate with a length of hardened chain that wrapped around the pipe and locked into a ratchet. You bolted it to a plank, clamped the plank in sawhorses, and you had a pipe vise that would hold anything from 1/2-inch copper to 4-inch cast iron without slipping under the torque of a full-size threading die. The chain conformed to the pipe's diameter automatically. No adjustment required beyond tightening the ratchet. A pipe held in a chain vise did not turn, did not walk, and did not require a second man to hold it. The modern bench vise with V-grooves works until the pipe diameter falls outside the groove's range, and then it marks the pipe and spins it at the worst moment. The chain vise held everything. Plumbers on eBay search for the Stanley and rigid versions from this era, specifically because the casting quality and chain temper have not been reproduced since. Number 8. The inside pipe cutter. A small tool, easily missed in a bag of fittings. It threaded into the bore of a pipe from the inside, expanded by turning a center screw, and cut the pipe from within by rotating the entire tool against the pipe wall. The use case was specific and irreplaceable. When a pipe was broken flush with a wall, or cemented into a fitting so that no external cutter could reach, the inside cutter went in from the open end and made the cut cleanly. Without it, the alternative was a cold chisel and a hammer, which shattered cast iron unpredictably and always left a ragged edge that refused to accept the next fitting. With it, the cut was square, and the job continued in 20 minutes instead of 2 hours. No modern equivalent does this as cleanly at this price point. A good example in original condition sells for $40 to $60 on eBay and earns that back on the first job it is used. Number 7. The tap and reamer set for pipe threads. A set of tapered pipe taps in the common NP thread sizes, 1/2-inch through 2-inch, each one housed in its own wooden slot in a fitted oak case. The taps were high-speed steel, made before carbide tooling took over, and the steel had a temper that modern import taps do not reproduce. The use was straightforward. When a threaded fitting stripped, cracked, or corroded beyond use, you did not replace the pipe. You ran the tap through the damaged threads, cleaned them up, and continued. A tap that was maintained correctly could chase threads in cast iron, steel, brass, and bronze without losing its edge in fewer than 300 passes. The case that held them was labeled by size in stamped ink that never wore off because it was pressed into the wood rather than painted on. The modern equivalent comes in a plastic tray with a paper label that separates from the plastic the first winter the case spends in an unheated truck. The taps themselves dull after 30 passes, and the set costs more to replace than the original oak case sold for in 1952. Number 6. The basin wrench. Not the modern stamped steel version. The original, made with a forged shaft, a swiveling jawhead, and a cross handle that was thick enough to grip through heavy work gloves without the handle torquing in your palm. The basin wrench existed for one reason. Faucet mounting nuts live in the worst possible location in a building. They sit 18 inches back under a sink, against the cabinet floor, completely invisible and reachable only by a tool with a long shaft and a jaw that pivots to face either direction, depending on whether you are tightening or loosening. Without this tool, 2 men were required, one to reach up from below and one to stabilize the faucet body from above, and the job still took an hour of skinned knuckles. With the forged original, one man did it alone in 15 minutes. The stamped steel version sold today flex under torque, the jaw slips off the nut face, and the pivot mechanism wears out within 2 years of regular use. Plumbers using original forged examples from the 1950s report that the tool simply does not flex. There is nothing to maintain and nothing to replace. Number 5. The lead melting pot and ladle. A cast iron pot, roughly the size of a large coffee mug, that sat on a propane burner and kept lead at working temperature for an entire day of joint work. The ladle had a long iron handle and a pour spout that directed the stream of lead precisely into the pipe bell without splashing onto surrounding materials. Lead and oakum work is still required when repairing or extending cast iron drain systems in buildings from this era. The existing pipe cannot accept modern push-fit fittings because the bell dimensions are non-standard by today's specifications. The original joint type must be matched. Every restoration plumber who works old buildings keeps a melting pot and ladle in the truck because no substitute exists for this category of work. Clean pots from this period, without cracking in the base from thermal cycling, sell immediately when they appear. The casting quality resisted the expansion and contraction of daily heating and cooling for decades. Modern reproductions crack within 5 years. Number 4. The Stilson wrench in the original pattern. Richard Stilson patented this design in 1869, but the best examples of it were made between 1930 and 1960 by Walworth, Tremo, and the original Stilson Manufacturing Company before consolidation ended independent production. The jaw design on these originals had a specific hook angle and tooth geometry that bit harder as torque increased, without slipping or rounding the pipe. The spring mechanism that kept the jaw open to the set width was tempered to resist fatigue across 40 years of daily use. A plumber who picks up an original Stilson next to a current production pipe wrench of the same size will notice the difference immediately. The original is heavier in the head where the weight is needed. The jaw closes with a precision that feels machined rather than stamped, and the tooth pattern marks the pipe less while holding harder. This is not sentiment. It is engineering that was not preserved when price competition pushed manufacturers to reduce material costs. Number 3. The pipe threading stock and die set. A threading stock is the handle and guide that holds the cutting dies during hand threading. The dies themselves are the shaped cutters that produce the tapered NPT thread on the pipe end. Between 1940 and 1960, every plumber on a residential job carried a stock and die set in 3 common sizes. Power threading machines existed, but they did not fit in tight spaces They did not go up ladders, and they did not operate when the power was off. The hand stock did all of this. A skilled plumber could thread a 3/4-inch pipe end in 45 seconds with proper technique. The cut thread was every bit as precise as a machine thread when the dies were sharp and the stock was properly aligned. The die sets from this era used a self-opening mechanism that automatically retracted the dies at the end of the thread, preventing cross-threading without requiring the operator to manually back off the tool. Modern hand-threading dies omit this mechanism to reduce manufacturing cost. The result is that modern hand-cut threads are more likely to start crooked and must be backed off manually at the end of every pass. Number 2. The flaring tool with the original yoke. Copper tubing work in this period required flared connections rather than compression fittings in many applications, particularly in fuel gas and refrigeration lines. The flaring tool worked by clamping the tube end in a block drilled to the exact outside diameter of the tube, then driving a hardened cone into the tube mouth with a yoke mechanism to splay the copper into a 45-degree seat. The quality of the flare determined whether the connection held or leaked. The original forged yoke tools from this period had a feed screw that advanced the cone at a controlled rate, allowing the copper to form gradually rather than split from too much pressure applied too quickly. The cone itself was ground to a geometry that compressed the copper into a dense uniform seat without thinning the tube wall at the transition. Plumbing inspectors in cities with old codes still in effect for new work in existing systems require a flare quality that the original tools produce consistently, and that modern stamped steel flaring kits produce only when the operator is experienced and careful. Number 1. The pocket pipe dope brush in a screw cap tin. This is the item nobody talks about. A small tin, roughly the diameter of a silver dollar and 1 inch deep, containing pipe joint compound and a short bristled brush fixed to the underside of the screw cap. You open the tin, the brush came out already loaded. You applied the compound to the male thread in 3 strokes, set the tin down, and made up the joint. The brush reached into the thread valleys and applied an even coat without globs that would squeeze into the bore and restrict flow. The tin kept the compound from skinning over between uses. It kept the brush soft, and it went into a shirt pocket without leaking. The compound formula used in the best tins of this era contained litharge, a lead oxide compound that set hard in contact with oxygen and produced a joint that could not be backed off without a pipe wrench. Those joints are still sealed in supply lines across this country and have not moved since Eisenhower was president. Modern thread sealant comes in a tube that dries out at the nozzle, loses its cap inside the truck toolbox, and applies unevenly because there is no brush. The tin solved all of this. It cost 30 cents. It outlasted 3 career plumbers before the last one retired and left his on a workbench in 1981. 10 tools. Not one battery among them. Not one O-ring. Not one electronic component. Not one part that a manufacturer stopped making in order to sell you a replacement. They worked because they were made of the right material, to the right dimension, by people who understood that a tool used every day had to survive every day. We replaced them with lighter versions, cheaper versions, versions that could be sold in a retail blister pack for $14. And we lost the standard they held without noticing it was gone. The plumbers searching eBay tonight noticed. That is why the prices keep climbing.